Goodbyes are always hard, particularly those that end sour. This happened with Daniel Ricciardo and McLaren after the two mutually decided to part ways after they just couldn't seem to get on the same page. The sportsman has since rejoined the Red Bull team, and his former boss at McLaren was quick to wish him the best for his next career move. Let's check out what exactly happened. First off, a promising start for Ricciardo with McLaren F1. When the Australian first moved to the team after bidding farewell to Renault, expectations from both sides were sky high. A shared goal for both the team and its new key player was to win the F1 World Championship during his tenure. Work wonders they did, at least in the start. Their first season together started off on a positive note and ended with Ricciardo taking the Italian Grand Prix trophy home. This was a milestone 8th Grand Prix win for the player. It looked as if it would be the first of many with him on board McLaren. Unfortunately, this was not to be true as a lot of factors, including the management of the team, gradually led him to his current decision. Judging by his Grand Prix win, combined with his determination to win, which we all saw in him pushing on despite all odds in lap 4 of the Bahrain Grand Prix, the 33-year-old probably didn't imagine his stint with McLaren to be as brief as it turned out to be. But quick decisions are necessary, especially in the high-stakes environment of Formula One racing, and over the course of his next season, a decision would be necessary. For good or for bad, the decision he made was to leave McLaren. Now, we'll check out what led to that decision. First up, the beginning of the end. Just as the prized player joining McLaren seemed like a dream team coming true, his second season with the team seemed destined to doom. From the start of the season, at the 2022 preseason for the Bahrain Grand Prix, things weren't looking bright. The bad vibes came in the form of a positive COVID-19 test, which led to a subpar performance that saw the 2013 BRDC McLaren Trophy winner finish in the Grand Prix in 14th position. Bad luck continued into the season, with colleague Lando Norris coming out on top in both qualifying positions and racing points. Of course, as in any sport, this meant lesser exposure for the Australian, who was facing increasing competition from his teammates. Usually, that's a good thing. In this case, though, things did get a bit too harsh for the player, as he was booted in favor of younger and less experienced players such as Norris on the basis of his recent performance. The ball didn't seem to be in Dan's court anymore. There was little to do but wait for a way out. Let's look at Ricciardo's own reasons behind his resignation. In an interview with Clarkson, the 6-time BRDC awardee cut to the chase and cited the lack of a supportive environment as motivating his decision to change tracks. His ambitions unquestionable, and so we were eager to see him get back to winning. It's harder to win when you're not feeling it though. Something similar happened with Daniel, who wasn't sensing the enthusiasm he's normally used to while he was working with the McLaren team. In more concrete terms, this meant he wasn't getting the proper feedback in the vehicle, with this having disastrous results on his performance at the corners. An F1 team is as good as its players, and its players are sometimes only as good as the machinery they're handling. With McLaren, Daniel wasn't so happy with the machinery itself, which he didn't think was fluid enough with corner entries. The lack of feedback supposedly continued off the track too, as the Australian mentioned the issue of transparency within the team. This included him being passed over for Lando later on, even after he'd outqualified him in his first race. Both car and racer have to feel connected to each other, as if they're two parts of the same team, working together with each other to score that win. It's understandable then that as time passed on, the issues started to pile up, both on the track and off it. Clearer and more open channels of communication, both from the decision-makers at McLaren and their pedal soldier on the track, might have resolved things for good. Sadly though, this wasn't the case. What's more, Ricciardo was the first to own up to his mistakes. Getting so far on the F1 racetrack isn't possible without an incredible racing IQ, an unshakable will, and regular self-reflection. Daniel possesses all three of these, as he minced no words when counting his own mistakes. Apart from the obvious lack of wins during his second season, this also included his struggles with getting familiar with the car he was driving. Eventually, this translated on the racetrack into a loss of speed and agility, but it wasn't for lack of trying, as the experienced driver pointed out several of these issues to his team, but failed to get the response he was hoping for. Similarly, his weaknesses were also the cars and vice versa. He pointed out some of these and offered a list of recommendations based on his experience. Some of these issues he was facing had to do with the car itself, which could be updated to improve aerodynamics and better traction on the ground. McLaren did finally decide to upgrade their vehicles. Unfortunately, the upgrades they provided proved disastrous for the Australians' performance. Following up, Spanish Grand Prix, where things went from bad to worse. McLaren was finally ready to turn a leaf and give in to some much-needed feedback. This resulted in it updating the suspension, changing the side pods, bringing out the diffusers, and making adjustments to the wings, front and rear, of their vehicles. In short, they were ready to bring out the big guns and make some noise on the track. Still, changes of any kind require a waiting period of sorts for a player to adjust to. You can't suddenly airdrop a player from clay to hardcourt and expect them to not stumble. In the same manner, Ricciardo, who'd barely gotten green with McLaren in their brief time together, was now pushed into newer, unfamiliar territory with his car. These changes were clearly not favoring him, as the 33-year-old found himself lagging behind Norris and falling even further down in McLaren's pecking order. This must have stung, as the player was more experienced than Lando. The changes to the vehicle were also significant in informing his theory of the racer and race car as being crucial to each other's success and failure. For Ricciardo, this blatant dismissal of his feedback and increasing distance between him and Lando was a sign of his increasing distance from McLaren. Up next, Ricciardo did receive a handsome severance package. The British squad does know how to take care of its own. It's certainly sad that it came too late for the racer to take back his decision. His healthy compensation amount is also a sign of wrongdoing by McLaren, since the squad was supposed to race with him through the 2023 season at least. But things got derailed before that could happen, and Oscar Piastri was promoted to the rising star in McLaren's lineup. True to rumors, he was the one who got offered a contract for 2023 over Daniel. Oscar's signing saw Daniel becoming the fall guy for the rising ambitions of the team. Still, it's remarkable how he jumped back from his dismissal come resignation and is already making the next move in his career. While he sensed a mismatch with McLaren throughout his tenure with the team, the 8-time Grand Prix winner decided to stick with it for as long as he could. If any verification was still needed, it's McLaren CEO's continued confusion about the star player's decision. Let's see what that tells us about the potential lack of communication over at the British team. Coming up, Zak Brown's not sure what went wrong. The McLaren boss expressed his surprise at Daniel's exit and eventually put it down to a mix of many things. Brown's goodbye note to the Australian does seem genuinely honest in admitting he doesn't know what exactly went wrong. After a promising start with the team and sailing off of Daniel's earlier success with Renault, big wins were expected to start rolling in immediately after. Brown himself was convinced that his bet on the 33-year-old wouldn't go to waste, and perhaps that's the problem itself. Not to mention, the expectations were unreasonably high. It's one thing to book a star driver, and quite another to book a rival team's driver. Both aren't the same thing at all, since one's being judged for their talent and discipline, while the other's a catch simply because he happened to be successful with his previous team. This treatment would be enough to put a dent in anyone's mood, especially someone like Daniel, who might have been expecting to be valued for his skill before finding out that he was just in McLaren for the wins. Zak himself suggested that their driver was supposed to be a game changer for the team, especially after his spectacular showing with rival team Renault. But a different team makes for a different player, and that's also true the other way around. It takes time to adjust to a newer environment, vehicle, and team spirit. With a little more time, perhaps Ricciardo would have gotten there too. Still, the reason Zak's not too sure about his driver's decision means there was a lack of feedback from both ends, and that's likely to just deepen with more time. Last but not least, Zak wishes him the best for his future career. Perhaps all's well that ends well after all, because the McLaren head showed goodwill in accepting the racer's ability to come out of the leanest bends. This was also the reason the British team hired him in the first place, and his former boss is excited to see his return to form, even if it's no longer going to be with McLaren. Brown also appreciated the 8-time winner at Grand Prix and his elegant win at Monza during McLaren's first season. This, combined with his ability to work hard and commitment to the sport, was appreciated by his former boss no less. It's a hopeful end to a new beginning for sure. That's all for this video. What are your thoughts on Ricciardo's lack of success with McLaren? We'd love to know your opinions in the comments below. Do hit the like button if you liked this video, and remember to subscribe to our channel for more such content. We'll see you in the next one.